Welcome to the My Haunt Life podcast.
Hello and welcome to the My Haunt Life podcast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Russell.
And where do we go from here?
It feels like we've always had so much recently in the podcast. This has been a really rich season, and now we're winding down out of haunt stuff, but there's so much stuff that's coming up, and there's so many things we've started to do. So we're going to touch on some of them.
You know, we joked about this earlier today. It's like, it's a Saturday night, and I feel like there's something that we should be doing, but it's only because the last month and a half to 2 months, we had haunts to go to. We had escape rooms, we had theater, we had tension. We had so many things to worry about, and now it's drifting away slowly.
Yes, definitely. Things are calming down, which is probably a good thing heading into the Christmas season. But we do have a few things to touch on. And Mike, to start out with, you had started doing Hamlet Mobile before me.
Yes.
And I was able to, I think the last podcast I'd only done one of them. And I was out of town a little bit recently, but right before I left town, like every night before this trip, I hit Hamlet Mobile. And so I was able to see several of their other shows. And we don't want to be too spoilery with this because we were told, I asked, and they said that they were planning on doing another round sometime next year, possibly next spring. They don't have any official dates yet, but we don't want to reveal too much. But of the shows, if you don't know what Hamlet Mobile is, they are very short plays inspired by Hamlet. And you go somewhere, they announce the location, and you go and you check in. And the show is actually performed around a van, inside, near a van, sometimes both. It sounds like a really oddball idea, but trust me, it works.
It totally works.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, you said you didn't want to give spoilers, but can you really give a spoiler warning for something written in the 1500s?
Well, you meet variations of the characters. So, and you know, Mike, I haven't done all of them, and I really hope they do come back, because there's a couple, the couple that I missed, I really want to. I have a personal favorite, and it is called Gravedigger Hotboxes the Van.
That one, that was probably my second favorite.
And it was just, you know, that was the one we touched on in the last podcast.
And I hadn't done it yet, right?
No, you had not.
Okay. Yeah, I think I was doing it the next night or something.
What did you think of it?
It was so fun. And I will say something. So you get asked a question, and this really isn't giving away anything, but you get asked if you think you could murder someone. And right away, I'm like, yeah. And the actor gave me this look of, oh, like just shock and surprise, and just went with it. It was so much fun.
Yeah, his performance, it is my favorite, mainly because of the performance of the lead actor in that piece. I had a different reaction to that question. I said yes, but because I believe everyone has a potential, depending on what situation you're presented with. And the thing that really struck me about that was, at one point, you know, I pointed out something to him in the monologue, you know, and we were talking about death and legacy and things like that, which is part of the show. And I pointed out, you know, like, what might be his legacy. And he literally looked at me and said, no one's ever asked me that before. No one's ever pointed that out to me before. And so it was a really wonderful improv-y moment in the middle of this play. And kudos to the actor, because I thought he rolled with everything that I gave him. He incorporated seamlessly. And it is there are other performers involved in this particular show. I don't want to say much more because they're a little bit of a surprise. But the entire cast of that piece was just on.
Yeah, the same thing happened with me, because after I did my he looked at me and, you know, like I just said, but then he went with it. He was like, okay, well, why? How? What would bring you to that point that made it so easy for you to say that? And, you know, I answered him, and then we started having a conversation back and forth.
Yeah, I had the same about something else, and my show ended with this amazingly sincere bro hug that was just. It was like it actually took me by surprise, but it was just more like, oh my gosh, we just shared this really cool thing, and it was I that's definitely my personal favorite. And there's another one called Interior Kitchen Night, which is probably my second favorite. You said Gravedigger was your second favorite, and that's just it's such a touching, wonderful piece.
That was the first one I did.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. It's so gentle and sincere and just truly moving.
Yeah, the last one I did was Girl with Flowers, which you were there for. Mm-hmm. That one was cool because that was the first one that I had done that had 3 people simultaneously.
Ah.
And I don't think this is going to be a spoiler, but it's so cool because there were 3 people getting 3 different scenes and interactions at the same time.
Yeah, and again, don't want to be too spoilery, but the character that I was with, I didn't realize until the very end just quite how they were affecting your stories. But, the things that I was told, the secrets that she told me about why she wanted to do what she wanted to do was fascinating. And then at the very end, all of the stories kind of came together in one moment. And that moment was such a revelation for me because I knew why from that perspective, but I didn't know what it looked like to you guys.
Right.
And it's one of those like, well, do they see it as betrayal? Do they see it as freedom? Do they see it as, like a release of some kind? Like, I really didn't know. And it was fascinating to like, and literally there's kind of a reveal where, like somebody opens a door and they say, oh, by the way, and the end of the show comes. It was so wonderful for me. Because I just didn't know. Like it was a not knowing in a good way.
Yeah, and I had your characters. I had the scenes with her father.
Ah, interesting.
So it was cool seeing that from that point of view as being a somewhat overprotective father,
right?
Borderlining on
very overprotective.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and what Mike's referring to is I was actually talking to the daughter who was feeling that they were being overprotective. So very interesting.
Yeah, and so I was able to do all of them.
Oh.
And I'm so stoked because the video game nerd in me was like, level up. I completed all the missions. Hooray.
So I would actually like to go back to the Girl with Flowers and do the other paths.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, Girl with Flowers is one you can definitely do multiple times. The other one I did was Breakup Sex.
That one was good too.
That's another just amazingly quiet, intimate sequence, and you just like I guess the best description is you enter into this little scene and you get a little glimpse into someone's really deeply private life, and it was so moving and so touching, and at the end of it, there was such sadness in that one for me.
Oh yeah,
it was so deeply moving. Now, but we haven't mentioned one, and I think that's your favorite.
Yes.
Which is?
Advice from Dad.
Which is the one I was not able to do because I was traveling out of town.
Oh, man. That one was just incredible. I will do that one again.
Oh,
like,
cool.
It's that good. And it's funny, too, because the night I went, Debbie was supposed to go as well, and she couldn't go. So because I kept bugging her and it's like, no, you need to see this one, she was able to get on a waiting list, so she actually did get to see it on the last night.
Oh, that's awesome! I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, I really want to go back and see that one because I know your reaction right afterwards was amazing.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we're not sure exactly when they're coming back, but they said they are, so keep an eye out. I'm going to guess maybe sometime around Fringe Fest, so maybe June or something, but we don't know. I'd be interested to see what else they come up with or whatever else they do. So for more information on Hamlet Mobile, you can find them on the web at hamlet-mobile.com or on Twitter, Hamlet Mobile.
Or Mobile. I pronounce it Mobile.
Well, how do you pronounce the next thing we did, Scholar?
We actually did an escape room, which has been a little while.
I pronounce it Escape.
Very funny. It's been a little while since we've just done an escape room.
Yeah.
And this is one that a couple friends that I know have done it and said that it was really interesting. And I thoroughly enjoyed this, partially because of the setting
Yes.
And the name of it is,
The Haunted Studio.
as in recording studio. It's literally set up like a recording studio where you have a main recording room and you have the sound booth with a mic. You have various props in it that feel like a real recording studio. It's, again, like, we respond positively to unique environments, I think. I think both of us do, for escape rooms.
And,
what did you think of this?
And personal favorites. I'm super into music. I'm super into horror and ghosts. So you combine the two, forget it. I'm all done. Like, it was such a good combination, and it worked really well.
Yeah, and you touched on something which actually plays a role in the escape room. It's hard to describe. Most escape rooms have a clue system, or this one had more than that. The clues were part. Help me with this? Like, it's so cool what was going on when you were in the room. But there are, first of all, I guess we should probably mention that it's a linear room.
Yeah.
So as your progression is marked, there are sound effects that happen inside the room which help you gauge how you're doing, which I thought was completely unique. And you mentioned ghosts. There's a ghost story. You're told a ghost story before you enter this escape room. And the ghost actually at times communicates with you during your little adventure. And I freaking loved that. I thought it was so much fun. Every time we heard the giggle or the voice, and there's certain things in here where you see imagery at certain points. Like, all of that was so much fun to me.
Yeah. And they make you do things that you really haven't done in any other escape rooms. That, number one, you have to do it in order to get to the next room.
True.
But it makes you have that much more fun if you're willing to, and I'm going to sound like Russell, play.
Yes.
Because, you can go into this room and just be like, okay, I'm only going to do this. I'm going to find clues. I'm going to escape. If you're not willing to have fun, then there will come a time in this room where I think you might not want to participate.
Yeah, because we're talking around this, but there's no way we can say what it is.
No.
But yeah, and I think I was the most shocked of the group because I literally went, no, that can't be what we're supposed to do. No. It just seemed so odd to me that was what we were supposed to do. And then I was about to say something would be too spoilery. It's because it's a recording studio, as you mentioned, Mike, music was involved, but you don't have to read music, but it's all around you.
Yeah.
And it would certainly aid, but they have certain ways of solving certain puzzles that you don't need to read music, even though you are dealing with a music recording studio. There's a lot of logic puzzles. There's really goofy, how do you put it? The visual stuff that I always respond to well. There's a couple of moments with pictures and things like that.
Yeah, and on top of all that, there's jump scares.
Yeah, there are a couple.
Mm-hmm. Another cool aspect of the Haunted Studio is in the waiting room, they have 2 VR systems set up. So not only can you go and play the escape room, but you can also do some VR. We were able to try out a couple things. You tried a game. I tried a carnival game. What did you think?
I thought the carnival game that you were playing looked awesome. And I'm not a gamer. And partially, Mike, through knowing you, I am becoming more and more intrigued with gaming.
Sorry.
I foresee this in my future.
Get PSVR.
I'm curious. I'm very curious. So I deliberately chose a POV shooter game. So it's, the first person thing, and I chose a zombie shooter game. Partially because for me to get used to the controls, because I've only done VR a couple of times, I wanted something that would engage both of my hands, and I knew that game did. I'd seen a demo of that game.
Sorry, I'm 12.
Oh, Jesus. And the game I chose, one hand was a flashlight you could turn on and turn off, and the other game was a weapon. The other hand was a weapon that you used in the game.
Was it the same one you did at Scare LA?
I think that might have been where I did it.
Okay.
Except what I chose, yes, actually you're right, it is. But what I did this time is I deliberately chose a different location, so it would be a different game.
Okay.
And I loved the location. It's like, I don't know if you noticed what I was doing, but it was this whole sewer, like underground subterranean drainage sewage system, and you were like, you could explore those areas, and they were coming at you from outside drains, and they were crawling out of drains and coming towards you, and it was a very cool environment. But because I'm so inexperienced, that's why I chose that as so like, okay, this is how I reload. This is how it just because it's new to me.
Yeah.
Now the funhouse thing that you did, man, that looked so much fun because I should say there are screens where you can see what the person who is in the VR headset is doing. So, which is why Mike was able to see what I was doing, and I was able to see the funhouse thing that Mike was doing.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in VR. I'm debating whether or not to buy a PS4 just for PSVR. So the more I get to try it, like the more excited I am about it. Mm-hmm. And I believe the systems they had were the HTC Vive. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
You know, because like you can move the controllers and you can see your hands in the screen, and you know, you can take I was shooting arrows at targets, and I was taking a hammer like whack-a-mole style, and it's just the future is crazy, man. Like I grew up playing Atari,
right?
And now if I told my 5-year-old self that in the future when you're an adult you will be able to put on these glasses and be able to play video games just by moving your hands, my head would have exploded. And that's where we're at in life. It's insane.
This is a great opportunity, and I think it's a great addition to an escape room because you already are in play mode. If you're there for an escape room, you're already in that mode of let's have some fun. So yeah, I think this is a really wise move on their part, and it's just right there in the lobby. And I guess if I'm not mistaken, you have to sign up in advance for certain times.
Yeah.
So I think, Mike, my suggestion would be when you book the Haunted Recording Studio escape room, ask about the VR. And,
definitely.
And give yourself some time to, ask if it's available at that time. Give yourself some time to do a little playing with this. Even if you're a gamer and you've had some experience with it, if you're not a gamer, like I'm a beginner in that area, I would highly recommend taking some time and doing it. And it is available there in the lobby of I keep saying that wrong, the Haunted Recording Studio. I had a blast.
Yeah. And I mean, you're already there, so you may as well just play more.
Absolutely. And like to thank Misha, who was our host that evening at the Haunted Recording Studio. Really interesting guy. Talking to him, really enjoyed spending some time with him, learning about the history of the building. And definitely, we definitely highly recommend this.
Yeah, and it's an actual recording studio, right? That was what he said?
Yeah, he actually said that it was at one point a recording studio, which is, when you get into it, it really does, it has the walls, this, I'm drawing a blank on what they're called. The sound baffling. They have the walls that, are from recording studios, and we ran into certain pieces of equipment that you may or may not have to engage during the escape room. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Definitely recommend the Haunted Studio. It was so much fun, and the added VR component just makes this an over-the-top, yes, definitely just go do it. For more information on the Haunted Studio, you can find them on the web at escape-studio.com, on Facebook, Escape Room Game, on Instagram, Escape Room Games, and on Twitter, Escape Room Game. And the next thing we had done after the Haunted Studio was Letter B from Annie Lesser's ABC project. And this is B for Barbershop. You may recall us talking about her A, which was Apartment 8, that we did at Fringe Festival, which was incredible. So we're really excited to see what B would be about. And B took place in a
barbershop.
Yeah.
Really, seriously, an actual barbershop.
Yeah. On Melrose. And there were 2 different versions. There was a 25-minute version and then a 10-minute version. So Russell, what did you think, and which one did you do?
This was an odd night for me because I had gone to one of the Hamlet mobiles. He said, pronouncing it correctly. And sorry, Mike, couldn't resist.
Where's that roll your eyes sound effect?
And it just so happened that Hamlet Mobile had a cancellation, and so they put me through early. So I arrived at Barbershop early, and Annie Lesser, who created the show, said, well, if you're interested, the 10-minute version, we don't think anyone's going to take this ticket, so if you want to do it. And so I walked up and was given the 10-minute version first, which in this particular case, it didn't ruin anything really, but I kind of wish I had done the 25-minute version first. The 10-minute version is an odd duck in this situation. You are sort of thrown into the middle of the scene and expected to react to something. Now, the cool thing was that I was asked a series of questions before the 10-minute sequence. And the questions were along the lines of, why do we make certain decisions? Do you ever feel that you've made and acted on incorrect decisions? Talking about how you judge people. Very interesting, almost philosophical questions. And then you're given the instruction as to how to start the sequence, which joins the 25-minute sequence, which is already in progress. That's sort of how this is tailored. So the 10-minute person joins in on the scene, and then something happens at the very end of the 25-minute version. So I started with a 10-minute version, and the thing that really impressed me is the actor. This is basically a one-man show. You encountered a character who went by the name Junior, and I walked up to a door. Junior let me in the door, and he immediately reacted to the vibe that I walked in with and incorporated my mood and how I was immediately into the show.
Oh, wow.
Because I was frustrated with... I don't want to give too much away. I was frustrated with the instruction I was given because I was supposed to go and interrupt this sequence, and he started asking me questions, and I didn't realize that I was supposed to have answers. So, and based on the conversation that I'd had earlier before I walked up to this door of how do you make certain decisions, he asked me why I was there, and I said because it's safer here than where I was before. And immediately he played into that of how I was feeling uncomfortable, and how something else had obviously gone wrong he immediately incorporated all of that in a couple of sentences. It was really cool, I felt. Then you participate in the ending of the show. Now, the 25-minute version, I thought, once again, I loved Department 8, the first of the ABC Project shows. Mike, I loved this show.
Yeah, agreed.
How did what did you think of it?
Well,
because you only did the 25-minute version, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I always say, and I've said this with Tension, is with any immersive piece, the moment you make me forget that I'm in a play, I'm in something theatrical, and I treat it as it's real, it's job well done. You got me, and that's what happened with this. I walked in. And as soon as we started talking, he was talking to me about he found out his girlfriend lied to him. And so right from there, I forgot that this was an immersive piece, and it felt like I was giving advice to my friend. We were just talking, and I was saying he should break up with her, and for all these different reasons, and how if he caught her lying, then he probably couldn't trust her, and then he would backpedal a bit. It was like, well, I didn't really catch her. And it was like, well, you need to figure out what you need to do. And I started not scolding him, not being angry, but just kind of being forceful. It was like, this is what you need to do. You need to do this, this, and this. And you need to find out for sure if she's lying to you. And then you need to figure out what you want to do at that point. And, it was awesome.
That's really interesting that you took that approach because he seemed very almost forlorn when I walked in, and I kind of picked up on that. So, and first of all, yes, I agree with you 100%. This was real. From the moment you stepped in, and it begins with a very awkward moment. Very awkward. Did you shake his hand?
I did.
Yes. Very awkward handshake. Followed by a very awkward scene in the bathroom, but not in a bad way. Just like two strangers who accidentally meet in a bathroom and have to have a conversation. And then he led me into the barbershop, and he asked, he offered me a drink, which I took, and and he just sat down and we started talking, and I kind of felt the whole empathy thing with the situation. So I was asking him questions, and he was asking me to compare notes with, like, oh, well, have you ever encountered this?
Oh yeah, he did that with me.
And, like,
as
what
well.
did you do? And I said, well, I did this, but it sounds like your situation is different. And what I'm getting to is exactly what you just said. He completely made this real.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't buy for a second that I was hanging out with an actor. Like, I was with Junior, and Junior told me his frustrations. And the thing is he was so, this is the way I saw it. He was so stuck in that relationship that he couldn't move forward. He didn't even know what he wanted to be or what he wanted to do anymore. And that was what I encouraged him. I was like, no, you have to make some decisions. Like, you know, this is your opportunity. Like, this is ahead of you. Like, you know, it's like, this is where you can go. You just have to make up your decision of you're going to go there. So I think it's a tribute to, first of all, the show itself, which is, you know, Annie Lesser, and the actor who I hope I am pronouncing this name right, Mikey Beatty, did an amazing performance.
Definitely.
And from what I've talked to a couple people who've done the show, and he seems to have been so good at incorporating whatever was given to him actually seamlessly into the show. I think this is a masterful performance. He was very, it was a very soft-spoken, intimate show for me. Mm-hmm. You know, it was like he sat down next to me and we talked very softly about some of the relationship stuff that he was revealing. And, you know, we talked about hair because we were in a barbershop.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was telling me how he wanted to cut hair.
Yes.
And then that was another point where I was like, talk to your boss, let him know. Maybe you can apprentice. Maybe you can learn. Maybe he'll let you, like, follow your dreams. Do it if you want to do it. Just do it.
This is why I like having you as a friend.
Why?
Because that's you.
Because I'm a motivator.
Yes, you are. You inspire those around you, Mike. Yeah, absolutely. And I did a less like point on version of that for him, you know. And I just kept pointing to the you create your own opportunity. So and then you move elsewhere in the barbershop.
Wait, before we move,
Yes.
I want to say something that's gonna come back later when I talk about the
Sure.
ending. So when we were talking about hair, he was saying how when you're in a barbershop, people open up for the most part.
Oh, yeah.
Because they trust him, because you have to trust someone that has something that sharp, that close to you,
Yes.
your head and things like that. So I just want to say that because it's going to come back for me later on.
Yes. And I think I have an inkling as to why. But yes, I had
Yeah.
the same conversation with him. So, and then we moved over to another area of the barbershop, and we started to play chess, actually.
Yeah, same here. Except I don't know how to play chess still. So he was just telling me like each character does,
Oh, interesting.
which was cool.
Yeah, because I was setting up, and we actually started to play. More conversation about the relationship, more conversation about what he wasn't doing with his life.
Did he ask you what chess piece you would be?
Yeah, he did, and I had several answers pop into my head, and I think the strongest one was the bishop, because it travels at angles and never in a straight line. But if I remember correctly, I swear I said the pawn, because they're always advancing forward, but not always with their own agenda. Sometimes they're in service of someone else. So I believe that's what I said was the pawn. Somewhere in there, you get interrupted.
By the 10-minute person.
Yes, and how does that happen, Mike?
They come and knock on the front door.
Yes, that's part of the instruction of the 10-minute sequence. Is the instruction was to knock on the door and not take no for an answer, which creates tension in the 25-minute show because he gets really frustrated that this conversation, which was at that point had become fairly intimate, was being interrupted. So how did that play out for you?
Well, it's funny because I had a tension person as come in as
Oh,
my
really?
10-minute. Yeah. So hello Larry, came in, and it was funny just because I knew him. I was telling Junior, I was like, man, that's rude. Forget him. Like, you know, basically trying to get him to not answer the door. But
That's funny.
But it made the scene that much better for me because I don't know him very well, and we had just met a couple days earlier. And it wasn't even that we really met. It was just like, oh, hey, and he had emailed and stuff like that. But to actually meet him in person and speak to him before the show and then going through this scene with him, it was so cool.
Very
it was
cool.
it's like, oh, it's this like a new friend who is on the into all the same stuff we are, who we're gonna be seeing at every event from now on. It's just like it's like the beginning.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it was really cool. But
for me, it was a complete stranger.
Okay.
Yeah. But I will say this. I was the 10-minute person for Lisandro, our friend.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So when I walked in, Lisandro was the 25-minute person. And I know Lisandro, and he's into the same things that we are. So that was very interesting, the ending sequence playing out between Lisandro and myself.
So Larry came in, and then he was having a really soft conversation with him, and I don't know what you guys were told or if you were supposed to ask questions when you got in or anything, but I know he was giving answers, and he was giving answers to questions that Junior was asking.
I didn't receive specific instructions like that, and so like I said a few minutes ago, I was surprised when Junior started asking me stuff because I wasn't prepared, and when he asked he asked if there was a heaviness because he sensed a heaviness, and he walked over, and to be honest, it's weird, Mike. Like, as the 10-minute person, like I said, I did the 10-minute sequence first. He gets really physically intimate very fast with a 10-minute person. He comes over and he literally puts his hand on the chest of the person. How many times have I been grabbed in the dark, in the light? Like, how many times have I gone through immersive theater or haunts or anything and roughly been grabbed or intimately touched or whatever? I swear this was one of the few times where it had a complete emotional impact on me. And I think because he was so quiet that I actually kind of like shook for a second. And when he leaned, and then I realized, like, oh wait, I think I was pulling back a little bit. And it wasn't my intention. I went, no, I have to let him do this. And he put his hand on my chest and said, I feel a heaviness here. Is there a heaviness? And then I think my favorite line of the whole show came next. And he said, who? And, I went, oh, yeah. And I really, oh, okay. And it kind of hit on me. And I looked at him and I went, do I have to say the name? And he said, only if you want to. I said, don't make me say the name. He said, only if you want to. But the way he was looking at me, I said the name.
Wow.
Of who was the heaviness in my heart.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa. So when I did the 25-minute version, that was the relationship that I pulled from when he started asking me questions like, well, have you ever experienced this? Have you ever experienced that? And, I shared with him something, deeply personal, and he completely reacted to it from the point of his character and what he had gone through and the relationship he was dealing with. Again, kudos to a wonderful performance. So no, we did not receive specific instructions or answers to the questions in advance. And like I said, I was so uncomfortable. I just said, I feel safer inside rather than out. And
Right.
He immediately incorporated like, okay, there's something going on. And he immediately came over and did there's a heaviness here, and he wanted me to reveal it. So, and then, pretty quickly we moved over to the barbershop chairs.
Mm-hmm. And that's where the fun began.
Yes.
So I'm assuming this would be the same for you, but he pulled out scissors and a straight razor and asked me to make a choice.
And
so
what did you choose?
straight razor.
Okay.
I watch Peaky Blinders.
So here's the interesting thing, Mike. When I was the 10-minute person, Lisandro also chose a straight razor. So in my 25-minute version, when I was given that choice, I chose the scissors, and he took the straight razor anyway.
Oh.
Which I thought that was an interesting reversal.
Why are you trying to ruin things?
So no, I just wanted to see if he would always go for the straight razor, because that says something about him.
And then after that, did he give you the choice of 1, 2, or 3?
Yes.
With you being the 25-minute person being 1,
Yes.
himself being 2, and the 10-minute person being 3.
Yes.
What did you choose?
I chose 3.
Oh, I chose 1.
Okay.
Because, foreshadowing, this goes back to the trust conversation.
Yes.
And because we had that conversation about trust, I was like, sure, I trust you. Whatever you can do, like whatever you want to do it because I trust you. And that's how it started for me. That was my mindset going into it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kept going more, closer, more.
And he moved the straight razor closer and closer to the person.
Mm-hmm. And he did give you a choice. After he would move it, he would say more or less, or closer or less.
More or less.
And no matter what, I just kept saying more. And finally it got to my throat and he stopped. And then he said 2 or 3. And so because it was Larry, I was like, okay, 3. Same thing. And I was looking Larry dead in the eye. And I didn't know him well, but if he went through tension and he's into immersive stuff, I was like, let's see how far this can go. So I was like, more. And then the same thing, I got to his throat. And then he's like, he put it to himself and was like, more or less. And then I just kept going more. And then finally, that's when he ran because he thought Christine was there.
Right, which Christine was the woman's name that he had mentioned earlier.
Right, the girl who lied.
Yeah, and there's a knock at the door at that point, which I think, depending on how you interpret the show, that knock at the door might be in his mind.
Oh. I mean, that would make sense because I actually did not get the knock.
Interesting.
And I mean, this was just because this was so time sensitive.
Yes.
There were certain cues that were missed. And Annie told me after the show, is like, I'm so sorry. I hope I didn't ruin your show. Like I just missed the cue. Like I tried to hear where you were. And so, but that made it that much better because that whole theory of it's in his mind solidified at that point.
Well, here's the thing. This is interesting. Maybe she was experimenting because when I was in with Lisandro as a 10-minute person, the knock came. In my show, it didn't happen.
Oh, wow.
And so we got a longer version, actually. So, yeah, it was really interesting. It was a very similar playing out of the sequence of like closer and closer. And yeah, I just kept, especially when it was on myself, I wanted to see how far he would go. Because of the trust thing, you know, and and the other thing that I did, which I got to admit, is like he handled really, really well in my 25-minute show when he was putting the the collar on and the sheet over me, like barbers do. You know, I looked at him. I said, "This is it. This is your chance to cut." Because he talked about wanting to cut hair, and then he interpreted it as me referring to the straight razor. I know because he said, "Oh, very perceptive," and he said it very quietly to me because I think he was afraid of tipping the hand a little bit to the other person. He just said like, "Oh, very perceptive." So, but yeah, I couldn't resist. I was like, "Here's your chance to cut." But really, I was referring to hair.
Not throats.
So yeah, but this was a really enjoyable show, just mainly because of the performance. I think he just immediately drew me in and made me feel comfortable, and just like really felt like I was. It's not that I was hanging out with a friend because we were strangers, but the fact that he just pulled me in, immediately sat me down, offered me a drink. And that was the thing is he said, we should never drink alone. And at the very end, he talks about drinking alone again. And, I just told him to be careful with that.
Oh, here, speaking of the drinking, this is the funny part for me because I don't drink. So I had water and he went to cheers and I was like, no. And I pulled my cup away and I'm like, you don't cheers water. It's bad luck. And he was just like, wait, what? I've never heard that.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, so then we had a conversation about how cheering water is bad luck. And,
right.
But it was just, he just went with it, like it was so good.
Yeah. This was such an enjoyable show. And when he talked about trust, did he fondle your hair?
Oh yeah. And he did the scissor motion with your middle finger and your pointer.
Yeah.
And like cutting hair. And yeah, he cut my hair. I cut his hair.
Yeah, he did that at the end, at the very end, before I was going to leave. You know, because the stranger who was part of my show was a woman, so I opened the door and let her go first. And Junior was about to close the door, and I just turned around and I said, "I want to thank you very much." He said, "No problem, no problem." And I said something about never drinking alone, and I reached up and I took his hair and I cut his hair one last time. You know, and I wished him luck, and then I walked out the door, and he closed the door behind me.
That's so cool.
So it was just like, yeah, this was truly fun. Like, even though the subject matter was a little bit of a downer, not too bad. I mean, it was just, you're just hanging out with a guy whose heart might be a little broken.
It's a downer, but it's still a step up from Apartment 8.
Apartment 8 was devastating.
Yeah.
Apartment 8 made everyone I know who saw Apartment 8 cry. Again, I think, you know, the ABC Project, 2 shows in, fascinating stuff, man.
2 for 2.
Yeah, it's like I loved both of them.
And this doesn't have to do with the show, but it kind of does. So while we were waiting, they were running a little bit behind. So there were some people that would come for the next shows, and they would come and wait. Every person that came, either I met through Speakeasy or Tension or Haunts or something.
Wow, cool.
Because, you know, Debbie and I went, and then Chris from Speakeasy Society showed up.
Oh, really?
And then Tim showed up, and then Larry showed up, and then Melissa showed up because she was helping with the tarp. And it was just like one person after another. It was like, and I think that definitely helped my show because it put me in a good mood talking to everybody, because it was a lot of, I saw these people for the first time since Tension, since the end of Tension. So it was cool to see these people and talk to them after it's been a few weeks, and we can digest everything, get back to normal. And it just put me in a better mindset going into the show.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's like, it's very funny because I showed up and Brian Bishop was there.
Nice.
From Verge. And there was another person who I didn't know, and then Lizandra walked up. I had a similar thing in the fact that I showed up and, you know, like 3 people immediately showed up that I knew. So yeah, it was really nice.
And did you talk to her about C at all?
She briefly mentioned that she was hoping it would be near the first of the year.
Cool.
I would say keep an eye out, hopefully in January, for information.
Where can people keep an eye out?
Oh,
for
really?
Information?
You can absolutely look for more about Annie Lesser's creations and the ABC Project at annielesser.verb.com/ABC. And Verb is with an I. Look up ABC Theater on Facebook, and on Instagram it is ABC_interactive, and on GoFundMe.com, please, ABC_project. Give them a little love, because ABC Project deserves it. This is a developing theater project to watch. The ABC Project is already, and we should mention, in case people who listen to this regularly are not making the connection, Mike and I recently talked about Indiecade, and one of the things we talked about that we did at Indiecade is a sort of preview beta test of a sequence from the C show of the ABC Project, which will be coming up soon. It sounds like a very, very ambitious show, and we wish ABC Project luck with that. And really looking forward to more shows.
Know what I was doing on the way home?
What?
I started to think of like horror and haunt things for every letter. Like, oh my God, wouldn't it be cool if H was for haunt or haunted or horror? Wouldn't it be fun if G was for ghost, or, you know? And I just kept starting to go all down all the lines.
T is for torture.
Yes. And then after Barbershop, you went to New York.
Yeah. Which was after the end of Ascension, which was so depressing, and I mean that mainly in a positive way. I was so sad, and then editing the podcast for a couple of days made me sadder, and then the podcast hit, and then I left for New York, and yeah, just meeting up with old college friends, Mike, just people who were really near and dear to me. There were a couple of people in New York, and they'd messaged me and said, "Hey, we're going to be in New York," and these are old theater nerd friends of mine. One of them is a friend. The other one is a mentor of mine that has expressed support for my creative life and career for many, many years. Catherine and Daisha. I thank them both for playing in New York for a weekend. But yeah, that's like I definitely did. And for the theater nerds, I was able to see, and it's closing soon, Something Rotten, which is a hysterically funny musical farce involving Shakespeare and the frustrated writers who are also trying to create plays around the same time as Shakespeare. I also saw The Great Comet of 1812, which is a big hit musical right now on Broadway. A slightly immersive staging on that. But here's the thing, Mike, that I wanted to mention to you that I saw, and it's called The Encounter. And it was actually the Complicit production of Encounter. Complicit is the name of the production company. And it was conceived, directed, and performed by a man named Simon McBurney, who is a really well-known, highly regarded actor and director in the theater community. Now, The Encounter is a show. It's a one-man show, and it's storytelling, Mike. But they sort of listed this as an immersive experience, and here's why. It was inspired by a book called Amazon Beaming by Petro Popescu, and it tells the story of a man named Lauren McIntyre who was a National Geographic photographer and was documenting an Aboriginal tribe and got lost with no way to communicate or save himself, basically. He lost complete contact following this tribe with the outside world. And the story of Amazon Beaming is how he communicates, and at one point, actually, he firmly believes, starts communicating with one of the elders of the tribe telepathically. So, how do you make a theater production of this? Well, Simon McBurney, and oddly enough, I knew the name, but I couldn't place why I knew the name. A few years ago on Broadway, there was a rethink of All My Sons by Arthur Miller. And I know, Mike, you've heard me mention that play before. It's probably my favorite play of all time.
Wow.
And he did this amazing production of it with John Lithgow, Patrick Wilson, and it's a family that sort of the structure gets shattered. All of the characters had new motivations to me. It was like seeing this play for the very first time. And I loved this play. So when I walked in and sat down for The Encounter and opened the program, I got so excited because like, oh my God, this is the guy who like totally blew my mind a few years ago with his direction of this other show. You sit down and there's a pair of headphones sitting on your seat. And there's announcements going in the theater like, please test your headphones, please test your headphones. So you sit down and you put on a set of headphones. And it's not a bare stage, there's a table. There's several microphones around the stage, and there is one of these. You've probably seen them. There's a replica of a human head on a post, dead center stage, and what it is that head is a microphone. So when they are using that microphone and he's walking around it in your headphones, you are directionally the head.
Oh, that's cool.
So he tells the story of this man who went on this amazing jungle expedition on his own. And he tells the story of the book, but what he's doing is he's using water bottles and he's using various other props to create sound effects, except he's using the different mics on stage. So how it becomes an immersive experience is the sound that he creates makes it feel 100% real, as if you're in a jungle following the tribe. So footsteps. And what he'll sometimes do is he will like shake some water in a bottle, and then he has a loop pedal. So he'll hit the loop pedal, the water sound will start looping in your earphones, then he will continue telling the story. So he started creating his own background noises. It was amazing. It was this deeply moving experience, and it was sold as an immersive experience, but the immersive was sound only.
Okay.
So that it's just another one of those moments where you go, this is fascinating. This is a new form of storytelling. I've attended one other production in my life where I sat in a theater wearing headphones and the entire audience was in headphones, and it was an experimental version of a musical. Didn't really work because it was isolating for me. This really worked because you still had enough of the audience environment around you. It didn't isolate me because his story was pulling me in so much. And you could sense the audience around you reacting positively and getting excited and getting concerned. So that was a fascinating immersive experience that I had in New York.
Cool.
So that was really cool. And it just, how we're always talking about what's next. Like, this is another immersive piece of storytelling equipment.
I mean, did you notice anything different from the last time you went to New York as far as shows? I mean, it sounds like this show had more immersion in it, at least for sound, but overall, did you notice things going in that direction?
Well, I mentioned the Comet of 1812, which is a musical. It's not an immersive piece, but what they did is they remodeled the theater a bit, and there were audience members on stage, there were audience members surrounding the stage, and the stage itself had platforms. There were ramps and stairs leading all the way up from the stage into the balcony.
Oh, cool.
And I was at the front of the balcony. And so there were two platforms to my left and to my right that were balcony level where some scenes happened up there. So not technically an immersive piece of theater, but the environment was immersive, and it had the feel of a nightclub. And sometimes what the performers would do is the performers would literally some of the patrons were seated at tables, like some of the people near the stage. It was almost like dinner theater feel. So there were chairs and there were tables. Sometimes the actors would go and join some audience members at a table and play out a scene with the audience members. So immersive theater, not necessarily completely, but certainly the elements were there. It felt like you were in a nightclub, and it felt like things were happening all around you, like a nightclub sometimes feels. Not necessarily immersive theater, but definitely the techniques were there.
That's awesome.
And then the rest of the time, I was just eating really good food with friends in New York.
So overall, it sounds like a good trip.
Oh, yeah. It was very brief. I was only there for 2.5 days.
And you got to do your true theater nerd stuff.
Yes. With my true theater nerd friends.
Awesome.
I think at this point you're still an honorary theater nerd, in my opinion.
Okay.
So.
Even though I only go to like horror musicals.
That's why I'm saying honorary. So we'll win you over yet somehow.
Which, by the way, when is Reanimator coming back?
That
needs
question.
to happen.
Good question.
But when you came back from New York, was there something waiting on your doorstep?
There actually was something waiting on my doorstep. The new box of Dread arrived.
Yeah, it was waiting on my doorstep too. But I didn't come back from New York.
And the interesting thing is I had forgotten about it. I knew the theme, but I had forgotten about it. So, Mike, what did you think about this month?
I was so stoked about the pin. Like, so stoked about the pin.
It's my favorite thing in the whole box.
Yes, mine too. The pin is of Kyra Schoen. It's the image from Night of the Living Dead that is on almost every poster, every sticker, everything you can possibly imagine. It's the little girl where it's half of her face and she's a zombie by that point.
Right.
And it's a pin of her face and it has her autograph on the pin. Not her real autograph, but what her autograph is on the pin.
It's very, very cool.
I was so stoked on that pin.
And for me, almost as stoked about the pin, I was stoked about the little figure that we got. Gizmo as a Christmas ornament. Bright light. Yeah, it's so cute. It's so freaking cute. I have a feeling this one is not going to remain in the package for me.
Well, do you want to trade them? Because mine, again, was out of the package. This company, I don't know if they're just not using glue.
That's interesting because my Crow one was like that.
Yeah, so was
remember?
mine. Yeah, my Crow was too. I think 2 out of 3 of them were.
Oh, that's
yeah.
interesting.
So my Gizmo was opened.
Oh, wow. I might be interested in trading with you.
Okay.
So, because I love him.
Yeah.
I want him out. And we got 2 little Gizmo cards.
Christmas cards.
Oh, yeah. They're very, very cute. They're kind of Gizmo being... I don't know. It's funny because I recognize this, but I don't remember what it is. Like, it's stills from the movie, including Gizmo looking very, very unhappy and Gizmo being surprised. Very, very fun little cards.
And just in case, we're talking about Gizmo from the movie Gremlins.
Yes.
And if you haven't seen it, please just go see it because I mean, come on.
Well, look, okay, it's very funny, Mike, because we were recording this a few days after Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
At Thanksgiving, at my Thanksgiving gathering among friends, one of the conversations that came up was traditional Christmas movies. Gremlins is most definitely a traditional Christmas movie.
Oh, yeah.
So, and the other one that came up is there were two people at my Thanksgiving dinner.
Wait, was it Die Hard?
Never seen Die Hard.
Oh. Because Die Hard's a Christmas movie.
Die Hard is absolutely a Christmas movie. So,
I've gotten into arguments with people about that, and it's awesome.
No, Die Hard is absolutely a Christmas movie. Two people at the Thanksgiving dinner I was at had not seen Die Hard. So, but Gremlins absolutely, Gremlins, this is a good time to promote Gremlins. Gremlins is definitely a Christmas movie, a little dark, a little moody. The Santa Claus sequence in Gremlins is one of the most horrifying stories in movies. And it's very disturbing, but definitely a Christmas movie. So it's and along with my other Christmas tradition, like, I don't know about you, but I try somewhere during the Christmas season to always fit in Bob Clark's Black Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, we should get together and watch that sometime.
We can have Christmas night.
Oh, that would be awesome. So, and I'm not talking about the crappy remake. I am talking about the original.
Of course.
Yeah, it's so good.
Because, I mean, you can do that. You can do Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Oh, true. I think of all Christmas-themed horror movies, Black Christmas is my all-time favorite, definitely. And also, Mike, what else was in the box?
There were two comics. There was Evil Dead 2, Revenge of Dracula, and then issue number 2 of the Book of Ebon, which I'm excited about.
I have not opened it yet, but definitely looking forward to it.
The best thing, and I think I've said this before, but Box of Dread bags and boards their comics, and it's so important. I know the non-comic nerds are like, what are you talking about? But basically, bagging and boarding is when you put a piece of cardboard behind it and then you put it in a bag. So that way it can't bend, it can't get crinkled. If you're not like reading it or anything, you just lay it out. It can stay perfectly straight and flat and not get bent. It's just cool that they do that because they don't have to, but they are.
Yeah, and it's for the collectors. It's obviously they know that they have fans subscribing to Box of Dread.
So Box of Dread, if you're listening, we appreciate you doing that.
Absolutely.
It makes a difference.
And something that we noticed during the Halloween season, Mike and I wound up at Halloween Town in Burbank, and we noticed that one of the figures that we had gotten in a past Box of Dread was on sale there, and Mike pulled me over and pointed me out, and he said, like, look at the price on this in a store. It just proves that Box of Dread is a good value. Because the price of that figure was almost the price of Box of Dread.
Yeah, it was like $15, I think.
Yeah,
for the reaction figure.
And we had gotten the figure plus comic books plus a pin, and so it was just interesting to see that in the real world. And I'm so glad you pointed that out to me because I hadn't noticed that. And the fact that Box of Dread is a value if you are a collector and if they have a theme you're interested in, highly recommend them. So I'm really glad you recommended this to me, and I'm glad I've subscribed because I've gotten a couple of cool things in each box.
Good. And there's stuff you can't find, like the Kyra pin. You can't find that, or the Trick or Treat Sam pin.
Yeah, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And for more information on the Box of Dread which we speak of, look up boxofdread.com on the web and on Facebook, Box of Dread. And also on Twitter, it is Box of Dread, all one word.
So those are the things that we've done recently, but there's a continuation of some things that we've done previously that you need to know about. One thing that we both loved during Halloween season that was really hard to get into because tickets went so fast was Delusion. Delusion extended their run through December 11th. So now is your chance to get that ticket. So go to their website at enterdelusion.com and there will be a ticket link. We'll also have links in the show notes, but get on it because tickets are going fast. The next thing is the Speakeasy Society's The Key, Chapter 1. This is the same show that we spoke about that we
loved.
Yeah, that we loved at Indiecade. Tickets are going fast for this. This is happening December 2nd and 3rd. This is to catch people up that weren't able to go to Indiecade for the next few chapters that are coming. This is going to be really cool, guys. So definitely try to check that out. You can find tickets at thekey.bpt.me. For more information on the key, you can check out the Speakeasy Society's website at speakeasysociety.com. Another thing that's coming up that we've done in the past is Blood Alley at Zombie Joe's. Blood Alley is basically urban death on crack, heroin,
and speed.
Yeah, every drug that you can think of mixed into one.
And this promises to be a Christmas-themed Blood Alley.
Even better.
Yeah, this is going to be oddball, I'm sure. Definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, so if you're a fan of Zombie Joe's, if you're a fan of urban death, if you're a fan of just messed up theater, definitely check this out. Go to zombiejoes.com and find more information on that. And that starts on December 2nd, and it's running Friday and Saturdays through December 17th. And finally, we mentioned this on the last podcast, but the Lust Experience, the follow-up to the Tension Experience Ascension, it's starting, kind of. The website is up, and now all of the social media is up as well. So we wanted to make sure that you all know about that. So the website is thelustexperience.com. You can find them on Facebook at The Lust Experience, on Instagram, The Lust Experience, and on Twitter, Lust_experience. So make sure you go to the website, you put your email in, you sign up, because if this is anything like Tension,
it's going to be an interesting ride.
You're in for a treat.
So yeah, this is stuff that we've just noticed that is coming up in the month of December, and it's related to stuff we've talked about in the past. It's an opportunity to sort of catch up on a few things, definitely. And the haunt season was so busy that we've talked to a few friends of ours that didn't get into Delusion, and I know of at least one person I know who got an extension ticket. So I'm really glad that these extensions and revisits are able to happen. I was so excited when I heard about Blood Alley, Mike, because that surprised me that Zombie Joe was doing something so quickly after the Urban Death, Tour of Terror.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing. And that kind of wraps up sort of what we have to talk about this time, but we have a few people that we definitely want to mention. Mike, I had another one of those experiences. I mentioned this from Wicked Lit when we talked about Wicked Lit. I went to Hamlet Mobile, and as I walked up, there's a woman, a very lovely woman named Allie, who kind of checked us in for each Hamlet Mobile. And
she was great, by the way.
Oh, she's so
super
helpful.
friendly,
so helpful. But I walked up, I think it was the second one that I did, Mike, and she was recommending, I believe she was recommending Noah's No Proscenium podcast to someone. Mm-hmm. And I walked up and she just said, oh, and I should mention that, this gentleman here does a podcast called My Haunt Life. And the woman she was talking to smiled and went, I've listened to My Haunt Life.
Nice. Thank you.
And I said, really? And she goes, oh, wait, your voice. Wait. And so her name was Adina, and she was jumping in full force with Hamlet Mobile. She had done all of them like you have done.
Nice.
And she was new to immersive theater, and she was doing the thing that just is so exciting when I hear people doing this. She didn't know if she would like it or not, but she just jumped in, fell in love with Hamlet Mobile, did all of them. And like I said, her name was Adina. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. And she was about to go on a trip, and she had already investigated and got tickets to Then She Fell.
Oh, rad.
So we were talking a little bit about Sleep No More and Then She Fell. And we just talked a little bit about just immersive stuff here in Los Angeles. And again, it was just someone who they didn't know if it was for them, but they were taking the risk.
That's awesome.
That's so exciting when that happens, and it made me smile. I was like just meeting her, and again, My Haunt Life. She had found because she was looking for more information about tension and ascension, the ascension part of tension. That's how she'd found My Haunt Life originally, but it was just other stuff that we talked about. And, she was just trying to explore and find out what else was out there. So, again, it was just someone who walked up and said, I didn't know if this was going to be for me, but I'm glad I'm trying it. And how many times have we said that on this podcast? Yeah. Just go play, people.
I had a similar experience with Hamlet Mobile, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was going up and I was waiting, and there was someone else waiting to go. He was right before me. And all of a sudden it was like, are you Mike? And it's like, yeah. And it's like, I'm Chris. I listen to your podcast. I work with Speakeasy Society. And it's
Oh,
like,
man.
oh my God, that's so cool. And, so he was very gracious of the things we've said about Johnny and
Oh, I
and
talked
everything.
to him after one of my, actually, I think after two of my Johnny performances. So we spoke very briefly.
Yeah. So it was cool to meet him like out in the real world.
In the wild?
Yeah. Like, because when you think about it, like all of these people, all of these creators, they immerse us into a world they've created. But then when you see them, encounter them in the real world, it's odd.
I'm so glad you got to meet him because he's such a nice guy. And like he really, I think it was after my second time, he and I really talked heavily for like I think 7 to 10 minutes about my experience and how much I loved Speakeasy Society. So yeah, he was a great guy.
That's rad. Yeah, and then he was the one that showed up. He was right before me in the barbershop.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Another person is Maxwell on Twitter. He sent a tweet to us about us saying that he listened to the Tension podcast and that's what convinced him to finally do Tension, which
yeah.
is so rad to hear. Maxwell, thank you so much for tweeting us. Thank you so much for listening, and hope you love Tension as much as we did. Or do, not did. It's present tense. And then thank you to Sid. Sid wrote us an email about the Zelda escape room that's coming up. Thank you. Sid wrote us in the past with links for Chicago when you came back from Chicago.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for writing, and thank you for the suggestions. And I need to stress that we don't know everything. So if you find something that you think is cool that we should know about, definitely let us know.
Please do.
So Sid, thank you for that because it really makes a difference when you guys send stuff. So thank you so much for that. And the next one is from Dawson. Dawson is someone that we mentioned quite a bit on this podcast because he won money from the Book of Fee. He does the Clown House, and he's starting to become an immersive theater nerd, an escape room nerd along with us. We're corrupting him.
Slowly but surely.
One thing he did not do, though, was the Tension experience. And he sent us an email after listening to our mega 4-hour emotional feels podcast and was just said some really nice things about how even though he didn't do it, he felt like he did living vicariously through us. And it was really cool and really meaningful. And, we see him often. So for him to actually take the time to write us that means a lot.
And somebody else who emailed about Tension is, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Andrea or Andrea?
I've never heard anyone wonder if they're saying that right.
I used to have a boss who it was pronounced Andrea. And she used to be very offended by anyone who called her Andrea.
I see. All
So
right,
I'm
then.
actually very sensitive to that name.
Well, on Andrea,
Yes.
let us know so we don't have to have a weird conversations like this anymore. But she sent us an email as well about Tension, and I'm not sure if she actually did Ascension or anything because she wrote to us and said she signed up on the forums a while ago, and she signed up when the questionnaire was live.
Right.
So that was a while ago. But I guess it kind of creeped her out once she started getting interaction. So I don't know exactly what she did, but it's really cool because she wrote to us and gave us thanks for how we recapped the experience and how the mythology is so detailed and the storytelling is so beautifully done. And she was able to get a sense of everything that had happened just by hearing our podcast. So
that's very touching.
yeah, that's really, really sweet. So thank you so much Andrea.
Andrea.
Yeah, one of those things.
One of those things. Sorry for butchering your name, because even if we got it right some of the time, we didn't the rest of the time. It's really touching to hear that, because Mike and I nerd out about certain things, and sometimes we look at each other recording this podcast and just shrug our shoulders and go, I hope some of that came across coherently.
More often than you would think.
And I think we did that a lot over Tension. So for people to feel that they got something from our nerding out about it is actually comforting to me. So I'm very happy about that.
And then finally, Chris
who
Chris,
I met through you, man.
Yeah, and Chris does a podcast and website called Sunspots Comics. We mentioned him previously on the website. If you're into comics, definitely check his podcast out. But he's really not into haunts. Mm-hmm. But he sent us an email and said that we inspired him from listening to all of the nerding out that you just talked about. And he did an escape room this haunt season and did 3 haunts, which to us is like, oh, 3 haunts, we do that in a day. But for somebody that isn't involved in it, isn't their life, that going from 0 to 4 things, like
that's awesome.
That's awesome. So thank you, Chris, and I'm sorry in advance because it's just going to get worse.
Yes, we apologize to your wallet. We apologize to you, but welcome to the club. And I'm that made me smile when I read that. And also I thought it was really interesting because he asked a couple of questions, Mike, right?
Right.
I want to talk about the second question first, because here's the thing. I'm not a comic book guy.
What was his question?
So no, I'm getting to it. I'm not a comic book guy. I read comic books in the 80s when I used to work with a whole bunch of people who were into comics, and it's something that's kind of faded away in my life. And every now and then I'll stop by a comic book store and pick up a couple of things up out of curiosity. He asked, "What is your favorite horror comic book?" And I don't have one because it's like, so he was kind enough to, like, I asked him, I said, like, guide me. And he wrote back with some guidance and like, try this. Like,
well, what did he tell you?
Well, he recommended something called Harrow County from Dark Horse Comics.
That's a good one.
Which, of course, I know Dark Horse. I know the name, but written by Colleen Bunn and watercolored style art by Tyler Crook, he said, which is apparently one of his favorite artists. So the fact that he wrote back and gave me that recommendation, of course, I'm going to go out and check this out upon his recommendation, and I just appreciate that because I'm now intrigued, and because I know you do the comic book thing, and I think it's time for me to go back and visit that world.
Oh man.
Yeah. The last thing I need is more stuff to do, but it was very kind of him to ask that question. And what was your answer?
Well, my first thought, and I had to email him back and ask him if this was acceptable, and he said it was as a horror comic, but Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. Wow. Which of course I'm familiar with. Yeah. I mean, it's so dark, and Batman is my favorite, and I mean, it's incredible.
Oh,
I mean, for that time when it came out, like that set the world, like the comic book world, like on its head. Actually,
I was actually reading comics at that time, believe it or not.
Nice.
So, and yeah, I remember reading, and the anticipation of each issue was amazing.
And then of course, The Walking Dead, just because I think that was a time and place thing for me, because I was looking for horror comics at the time that came out, and it was before the zombie trend. So it was like, oh, cool, a comic about zombies. Now you go into a comic store and there's like 50 comics about zombies. Right. And just the fact that it's still going, and not even bringing the TV show into this, but the comic, there's so many twists and holy crap moments. Like I still get that reading it like month after month.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Spoiler alert for the comics, but once you get to the Whisperers arc, oh my God, your mind will just go nuts. And that's all I'll say.
Yeah, it is. I went through I went through an Alan Moore phase, where and for a while Alan Moore was doing Swamp Thing, and so I went through phases like that where I would get into horror stuff and go through arcs. I would sometimes find a particular writer or artist that I would get into for a while, but I never found a series that even The Walking Dead I read for about a year, and then just for some reason I just kind of grew away from it. So so I'm really happy that Chris made this recommendation, and I am planning on going and checking it out. But his other question, Mike, his other question surprised me, actually, to be totally honest. He asked us to share, if we would be willing, a personal, non-haunt or immersive theater, horrifying moment in each of our lives that really shook you to the core to this day, is the way he put it. So what was your answer to that?
I mean, I have so many different answers. Like, one of them could be when I was little and my dog ran away and then realized he was hit by a car. You
Ooh.
know, like that's a horrifying moment, you know.
That's funny because I immediately went to scare.
Right. And that's where I'm going with this.
Oh, okay.
But there's two. One of them you were there for, the Omen House. The butcher block.
right.
In when I was ghost hunting at the Omen House, and I had the butcher block just fall in the pitch black room with just me in it. There's video of it on YouTube.
And I was standing right outside the door, and when Mike rushed out, my first thought, I said, like, "Are you okay? Because it sounds like you fell. Did you fall?"
Yeah.
Because literally the noise was so loud, I thought Mike had fallen, and I was worried by the expression on his face that he had hurt himself. And I was like, "No, he just encountered a ghost."
Yeah, that was nuts. Then my other non-haunt, but about haunted at the Stanley Hotel last year when I woke up in the middle of the night and I heard what sounded like weird scratching at our closet door.
Ugh.
And in like my heart, I thought it was, you know, in the cartoons when the cartoon wolf sees a hot girl and his heart just goes out.
Right.
That's what it felt like my heart was doing. Like it was going so fast, like so fast, because I woke up from a dead sleep, no pun intended, and heard this. So you're half asleep and you're trying to process this, like, oh my God, well, whatever that noise is it from an animal? Okay, number one, that's enough to freak you out because there's an animal in your room. Number two, you're staying in a haunted hotel on the haunted floor. Your mind just goes nuts. But the thing that made it that much worse was as soon as I moved, it stopped. And I'm not talking about getting up, causing a ruckus. I'm talking about moved my head half an inch.
Which means it was watching you.
I didn't take it like that, but thanks. Now I do. But yeah, it knew I was awake, whatever
Right.
it was. And that freaked me out so much. Your turn.
Well, I wrote back and I gave Chris because this is one of those. I don't know. I think this is one of the earliest times in real life that I remember just being terrified. And I grew up in the Deep South. I grew up in Mississippi, and this had to have happened sometime in winter because the weather is key to this story because it doesn't get cold enough to snow, but it gets really wet sometimes in the winter. So it's cold and miserable and soggy and just plain miserable to be out in. just like it gets really unpleasant when the temperature drops and it's that wet and rainy. And so I think I was around 14 or 15. And the reason I think that is because how tall I was, because that kind of plays into my vision of this. Late at night, my mom and dad had already gone to bed. My sister and I were watching television. So this had to have been fairly late in the night. And it's rainy and it is completely foggy outside. And I'm talking really dense, thick fog. So there's a knock on our front door. And of course, this late at night, like, okay, that's weird. Why would someone be knocking at our door in the middle of the night? So I get up, I go to the front door, and I open the door. And we have a screen door because the mosquitoes in the south will kill you. So there's a screen door, and I open the door, and I don't see anything immediately. And I turn on the porch light, and all I see is fog. So who knocked on the door? And I'm thinking, hello? And there's no answer. And I just can't figure it out because my sister also heard the knock. So I am literally about to close the door, and then in front of me, I start to see a shape, and I start to see like the hair of somebody materializing out of the fog. And it looked like the fog was creating a human being.
What?
And so the head formed, and then suddenly the entire body formed out of the fog. And this man materialized in front of my eyes. And I heard a hello before I actually saw any facial features. So this man was materializing, and the figure spoke to me, and I screamed bloody murder. And my parents come racing out of the bedroom, terrified because of my scream. Well, come to find out, what had happened was a man's car had broken down by the road, and we were the closest house. And he saw the house somehow in the dark. I don't know how, because it was so foggy. And it was an optical illusion, because when I flipped the light, the porch light on, it lit the fog. It was reflecting off the fog. And what he did was he just stepped forward into the light, but it was so foggy, it looked like the fog was creating him. But in my 14-year-old brain, like, it was a man being created from the fog. And of course, at that age, I'm already completely into the horror stuff.
Of course.
So I literally believed I was watching a human being materialize out of nothing.
That's incredible.
And I felt so bad because I terrified my mom and dad. So, and them rushing down the hallway out of the bedroom to find out who had died or what was going on. But I will never forget that image of the outline of his hair appearing first and then the body material. I will never forget that image. It was so frightening. But yeah, that was a real life scary moment for me.
Nice. So Chris, I hope those answers were okay.
Yeah.
But if anybody else has questions like that that you want to ask, feel free to email us, mike@myhauntlife.com or russell@myhauntlife.com with 2 S's and 2 L's. I wanted to mention a new feature on the website. We now have forums. The forums have been there for a couple months, actually, but we were keeping them hidden and just making sure to test everything and make sure they're okay. So they're there now, and you can find those by going to the website at myhauntlife.com/forums. One of the things that I realized from the tension experience and talking to everybody is there really wasn't a place for people to go and nerd out about immersive theater and haunts and escape rooms and everything like that. So figured I'd just do it myself.
Well, the forum format that we're familiar with from the tension experience actually was really beneficial for the community. Mm-hmm. And so many people have reached out to us through myhauntlife.com. Hopefully that this will provide some place of support and encouragement and a sharing of experiences.
Yeah, which is all we want.
Yeah,
people to come together and try new things.
That's why we keep encouraging I keep using the word play. That's what this is about for us.
So check it out. If you like it, sign up, talk, leave messages, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
So that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
You can find us on the web at myhauntlife.com, on Facebook, myhauntlife, and on Instagram and Twitter, myhauntlife.
So this is Russell.
And this is Mike.
Thanks for listening.
See ya.
Just say that again. You kind of asked it as a question.
That's how I talk, Russell. Stop trying to make me like you.
No, you'll never be like me.
Obviously. Thank God.
You say it like it's a bad thing.
I did.
So, dude, my feelings.
Sip your soda.